We've all heard about grandma's cookies baked with love. It conjures up a strong idea, puts an image in your head, whether it's your own grandma or somebody else's. We all know what you're talking about. It means that she was thinking about you while she made the cookies, making them taste way better. Today, I will be discussing the argument presented in the New York Times editorial Double the Federal Minimum Wage, and how this editorial is definitely not baked with love. The article failed to create a strong emotional connection between the readers and those who would benefit from the proposed wage bump. The article failed to create a logical connection between those who already make more than $15 an hour and advocating for this issue. And the article failed to establish credibility in its numbers and proposals. Emotion is an important ingredient to successful argumentation. And these are ways the New York Times editorial could have skillfully incorporated emotional language to create a strong personal connection between the reader and raising the wage. The New York Times editorial Double the Federal Minimum Wage has very little in the way of emotional language, which is a large missed opportunity. They are advocating to give poor working class citizens more money, which really is something we should all be behind. The Congressional Budget Office estimated a $15 minimum hourly wage would raise the pay of at least 17 million workers. This is the only mention of the workers who would be helped by the proposed bump. While 17 million is a lot, they don't speak on who those people are or who would be indirectly helped by this bump. According to an article posted by the Economic Policy Institute, the real number of those affected is closer to 40 million. Including 23.8 million full-time workers and 5.4 million single parents. They also failed to link the wage issue to the issue of the gender wage gap. According to an article titled How Raising the Minimum Wage Ripples Through the Workforce, women are 60% more likely to earn minimum wage today, therefore making them 60% more likely to benefit from this increase. Today, feminism is such a huge issue, and the amount of people behind this issue is massive. By linking the feminism effort to this wage gap, they could have garnered a lot more widespread support with that social activist group. Another important thing in effective argumentation is logic. The editorial calls for a minimum wage to be $15 an hour, but the fact of the matter is the majority of people are not paid by the hour, and even some who are make more than $15 an hour. And so the editorial failed to create a reason for those who already surpassed this wage to want it. The entire economy would actually benefit from the wage bump, it turns out. That the rising wage floor would result in an excess of $118 million in wages that would end up in the families of those workers. Because low-wage workers tend to spend more than they save, these funds would actually end up being recirculated into the economy, and they would cause considerable growth. A growing economy is good for small business owners, investors, and those seeking employment. By tying the economic growth idea to the idea of raising the minimum wage, we create a common goal that unites people who like money. Now we have logic in the argument and the support of anyone who likes money, which, by the way, is a lot of people. Now, the last facet of argumentation that could have served to better this editorial's argument is establishing credibility in its numbers with relevant information. The article's main claim is that raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour would solve one of the problems the American economy faces. However, nowhere in this article do we see where they arrive at that number, $15 an hour. The only hard evidence we see is a report published by an economist in which he says that the minimum wage should be $11.80 an hour. But we see no reasons or no evidence that gives us the additional $3.20 to arrive at the proposed $15 an hour. Had the New York Times editorial shared the math used to arrive at this proposed wage, the editorial would have been much more credible and it would have been much stronger. In an article published by the Economic Policy Institute, they use real numbers to arrive at what they think the minimum wage should be right now, $12 an hour. They use the peak minimum wage in the 1960s. They use the median wage then and the median wage now to arrive at $12 an hour. In conclusion, the problem with this editorial is not what they are advocating for, because I very much agree with the issue, it's how they are doing it. I have illustrated how evidence that directly backs your claim, language that creates a strong emotional appeal, and tying the needs of the few to the needs of the many are all ingredients missing from this article. Perhaps if this editorial would have included all of the elements I just detailed above, it would have gained more widespread recognition and support, and the Raise the Wage Act would not have died in Senate as it did.